So what do you think about the frame?
Scoot your way a little bit. Okay, I think that's fine. What do you think?
Good.
Sure, okay.
Ready?
Yeah.
All right.
Hi, I'm April Marciszewski. I was a newspaper journalist for 15 years, if you count writing for the local newspaper as a middle schooler.
My name is Charles Martin. I am the founder of Literati Press Comics and Novels, but before that I was a journalist for well over a decade. Worked for Oklahoma Gazette, Yahoo News, Austin Music Magazine, just a slew. I was a freelancer, so I bopped around a lot.
And I primarily wrote for major metro dailies like the Indianapolis Star, Fort Worth Star Telegram, the Oklahoman, and the Associated Press.
Yeah. So we're going to talk a little bit about journalistic writing.
And the Tulsa World.
And the Tulsa World, where she was
gosh.
at more than anything. So we're going to talk about journalistic writing. Just really quick, this is not going to be comprehensive. This is just to give you a little bit of introduction and what to expect if you're going into a career as a journalist.
Yes.
So first things first, let's talk about the different types of print journalism.
Okay, so, I mean, news, you've got the straight news that we all read every day. We're here. Features, sports.
Editorial, and then various types of reviews. Now, the writing for all of those are going to be very, very different. There are some things that kind of hold throughout, but
The skills are similar.
the skills are similar, yeah.
Editorial is pretty different, but it's really important that you have a good grounding in how to do traditional journalism if you're going to do that. Because you want to know how to gather facts, get sources that are reliable, include multiple viewpoints.
Yeah, and so just to give you a quick brush on how they're going to be different. News is kind of the core that everything is built out over. It's who, what, when, where.
Why and how.
Why and how. And it's somewhat formulaic, specifically because it is trying to get you the information as objectively as possible. But then you get into feature writing, which is going to be a little bit long form, a little bit more, little touch of artistry to it. And then
They're not hard and fast categories. I feel like, especially nowadays, like a decade ago, the Associated Press experimented with providing two different types of leads, a more human interest lead and a, straight facts. Like here's like the most important information you need to know, like the reverse pyramid, like the most important down to the least important as your story structure. And the human interest leads actually fared a lot better and people wanted to read them more.
Yeah.
So I think there's kind of a balance. There's a blurring of categories and there's also a balance in trying to get your readers to read what you're putting out. Because if no one's reading, like your job is pointless and your job is a service to the readers or the viewers or the listeners.
now feature is specifically as that kind of style, that kind of, I don't know, not even, but the Venn diagram of all of them, how they come together. The feature is going to be human interest. So it's going to look at, it's not going to be like this thing is happening or just happened. This is, hey, here's this really interesting person doing this really interesting thing. They tend to be a little bit softer in tone, a lot more description to them. And then you get into editorial, and editorial is the one place within journalism where you get to express your own opinions.
Yeah. Yeah.
Objective journalism is a little bit out the window.
But you still want to base it on facts, and you still want reporting to inform what you're writing, and you want to include elements of all of that in your piece. Otherwise, you're just another person sharing an opinion that's not founded on anything, and you're not as persuasive that way.
Now, sports seems like it should be a lot like news. In a lot of ways it is, but sports is much more colorful because it's not to say that sports are
It
frivolous.
should be.
But yeah, it should be. It's not to say that sports are frivolous, but it's because it doesn't have to hard hit and be as objective and serious. You don't need to be serious with sports. So there's a lot of leeway given to sports writers to be, more flourishes within their writing.
Yeah, well, and it's entertainment, and you have a lot of big personalities, so there's a lot of room for colorful writing.
Yeah. Now, reviews, like film reviews, music reviews, those are kind of like their own little subcategory of editorial, where you have a critic that has some sort of authority on a subject that is then telling whether or not something is terrible or okay.
sometimes it's news on like music or on film. So in a newspaper or a newsroom, that would actually fall under news and not editorial.
Now, the unifying thing, which is the next lesson that we want to go over really quickly, is strong lead. Because whenever you're writing in journalism, you are fighting for your reader's attention every single sentence. So your strong lead is your way to really punch and say, you're going to read the rest of this story.
So you want to make it really interesting. You don't want any passive voice, like there is, there are. In fact, no is, be kind of verbs. You want active verbs, and you want as concise of writing as possible to make it as lively as possible. And like if there's something really weird or interesting about the story you're telling, put that in the lead.
Yeah.
You're
Absolutely.
trying to catch attention.
Yeah. And so that reverse pyramid or reverse triangle, whatever, is kind of a big guide on that, where you get them early and know that the chances of you losing them goes up and up the further down they go in the story. But you want to try and pull them all the way through.
Yeah, so that structure is used less and less now. Like it can be a guide because you do want to put the most important information up front, but you also don't want to not reward people who make it to the end. Like you want a good, well-crafted ending.
Yeah.
Because you're a great writer, and so that's something you're going to strive for.
Yeah, and if you read the top tier talent working for like the New York Times, the Washington Post, like they are able to do it like it's almost like a short story where the ending really wraps up everything, and it feels very satisfying.
Yep.
Okay, so moving on. Your first task is to write clean and efficient copy. So you want to make your editor's job as easy as possible. And if you are a writer of any type and you're really wanting to be good at your craft, journalism is really great for this because your feedback is instantaneous and brutal. Because if your editor feels like you're bringing in not clean copy, but sloppy copy, they're gonna let you know, and you're gonna get it back with a whole lot of red marks on it.
It's actually really good practice for being a writer because you have a lot of deadlines and they happen pretty quickly, and you're getting feedback really fast. So it's a great experience.
So what is some of the tools that a writer can access to know if they're writing clean or not?
Well, as far as knowing they're writing clean, I would say you need to be reading good writing. Like read great writers, and that's of all sorts. You want to read within the type of writing you're doing, but also read great novels, essay collections, whatever. A variety of sources.
And get to know the Bible. And by the Bible, I mean the Bible for Journalists, which is the Associated Press style guide.
Yep.
That is all the questions that you need to know about where a comma goes, what needs to be capitalized, what doesn't need to be capitalized, how do you abbreviate things. It's the cat. But that is going to be something that's going to be drummed into you if you pursue this line of work. So get to know the AP style guide.
Yeah, I found the Pointer Institute out of Florida to be really helpful. I've been out of journalism for a little while, but you'll find great writing resources that can help you write better. Like one of the things I learned from a column they used to have was put your subject and verb together, and then you can have as many flourishes after that as you want, like prepositional phrases. And your reader is able to follow you more clearly because they understand what's happening. The cat walked into town, which was blah, 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 blah. But you've grounded them. And if you lead in a sentence with 15 prepositional phrases, they're having to hold all of that suspended in the air in their heads to try to figure out what is that attached to. So that's just one little tip. But there are good sources out there for ways to make your writing great.
Now, another really, really critical role for all journalism, regardless of what area, your feature, sports, whatever, is attribution.
Yes.
Attribution will save your career or will wreck your career.
So that's telling people where you got the information you got.
Yeah.
And it's also important to know as you gather your information, how do these sources know what they know? You need to get sources as close to the action as you possibly can. The police officer who was at the scene who investigated the crime. The person involved in the crime.
Yeah.
You want first or second-hand sources, never third-hand sources. Oh, I heard about this thing down the street. No, you do not quote those people at all. And you always want multiple sources, at least 3 sources in any kind of journalistic story.
And it's never Wikipedia.
Right.
And the reason for that, and those people that know somebody that knows somebody that knows somebody, they can be helpful to get you to the story, but they're not the people that you quote.
Because their information isn't necessarily reliable because they weren't there.
And if you end up being a freelancer or even a career journalist, those kinds of people that know a little bit about what is happening in the city, but they're not directly involved, those are going to make you a lot of money, because whenever you need to find another story, you go to the mavens, as they're called, the people that know everything that's happening in town, and you can get a lot of good stories from that, ideas from that, but they're not your quotes.
Yep.
And now the reason that comes into benefit for you is if you write a story that the subject matter comes back and says that's not true, there's no way you know that. If you did not attribute it in your story, then that's the kind of thing that can get you sued. But if you attribute it to the person that gave it to you, then that takes all the heat off of your shoulders, but also gives that point more authority.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You are not the source of the information. Other people are the sources of the information in journalistic writing.
Yeah, exactly. Now the final and most absolutely, definitely the best, most important thing you will get out of this is
Make your deadlines.
Make your deadlines. If you are a journalist and people are paying you, you have to make your deadline. If they give you a word count, say like 250 words, 500 words, do your best to hit that word count as exactly as possible. And why is that, April?
Well, because the editor or the designer is trying to make it fit in a certain space. And if it's way over, then they're going to have to spend a ton of time cutting it. And if it's way under, they're going to have to scramble to figure out content to fill the space.
Yeah. So think about print journalism. You've got a magazine page or a newspaper page that's this big. Your story needs to go in here or maybe here.
And this is true on, radio or TV too.
Yeah. Then you're talking about time at that point.
The internet is different, but I would imagine that editors for the internet would also have different word counts, because sometimes they're going to want to promote something to be a long read, and other times they want quick hits because they're going to get more readers, getting them through some information quickly on some of the things.
So if you want to be a successful journalist, you hit deadline, you get your word count where it's supposed to be, you make sure that you're writing clean and know what you're writing, and you attribute everything that you bring in. And this is...
Don't change quotes either.
Don't change quotes.
Now don't say, Sally said, I'm gonna. Now make people appear to say what they actually intended to say. You don't dumb people down, even if we colloquially say gonna.
Yeah.
So because you're gonna insult them, and no one if they wrote it out, they would intend to say going to. None of
So
that.
you want to smooth it out and make them sound smart, but you always make sure that the intent is always clearly what they intended. If you take them out of context, then...
Yeah. Well, and if it's not a good quote, don't quote it.
Yeah.
You can paraphrase it. You can not use that information. I get a lot of information from sources that informs the whole story, but I figure out what's most important and whittle it down to what I need. I'd rather get way more information than I need and have choices, because it makes a stronger story. I don't want to tell boring information.
Yeah. Now, so if you're into creative writing in general and looking at the different options, the reason that journalistic writing is worthwhile for you is because it teaches you to write on deadline, teaches you to find stories, it teaches you all of these different skills.
It's really creative too.
And it's really creative. But if you're a younger writer...
It can pay the bills.
Yeah.
At least help.
If you're a younger writer, it teaches you discipline, which is great. You can't just write whenever you're in the mood, you write all the time. But also, for me at least, and I know for you as well, I was an introvert and I was very shy. And
I was the same way.
Journalism brought me out because, if you are writing a story, you can be the person that you're talking to could be the coolest person in the world, could be the richest, most powerful, but if they want that story written, they're going to want to talk to you because you're a journalist. So
when I was in 7th grade, I told myself, it's not me who's interviewing this person, it's me as a journalist. So it's kind of, which is silly, but it really changed me. And I feel like I'm a more open person because I was asking people to be open with me.
So, journalistic writing, as quick as we could do. Good luck on your careers. Go out and change the world.
Absolutely.